Marcy get finished hanging the clock. Thanks, Marce. Hello, Andrea. Alrighty, I think we're good to go. Good evening, folks. Looking to resume the regular meeting of council, Monday, March the 9th, 7 p.m. We have one item to add to the agenda. Folks, you had it at your table with a memo, and if you could insert, please, at 7.3.2. And with that, looking for approval of the amended agenda.
So moved.
Seconder?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Note that Councillor Martin is away as per his request. And with that, we shall move into public participation. If there's any folks within the audience that are looking to present to council, please step to the mic. And for the benefit of all of us and our recorder, you can either say your name and address and whatever as per usual, or you can just provide it to our recorder.
Larry Elford at 276B Belmont Road. Greetings, Madam Mayor, Councillor, staff. Everybody seems to be in position and ready to go. Congratulations. We were invited to attend a meeting last Tuesday night of the Planning and Land Use Committee with regard to 284 Belmont Road.
Madam Mayor, one moment, please.
Yeah, it just, for one moment, Councillor Nault would like to declare a conflict with that particular property in that he lives adjacent to it.
Indeed he does.
And so if we can allow him a moment to step aside just to keep everything on the up and up here so that he's not hearing or receiving any information on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This regards development permit, variance permit DVP 15-001. So we were invited, the community was invited to attend this meeting, and we did. And it was very efficiently carried out. It concerns the parking in this new building and how it might be relaxed in various ways to accommodate the size of the building that is being constructed therein. And at the bottom of that part, it says, additionally, the applicant has requested amendments to the existing development agreement registered as a S219 covenant. So those of us who weren't particularly concerned by how you parked cars underneath a building were concerned with how the building looked, how it was sited, and what other aspects of it might interact with our immediate community. We were very politely treated by Gordy Logan, who pointed out to us really that this meeting was about parking. It didn't have much to do with anything else, although we did come on the expectation that we would have something to say. And each time we said something that wasn't about the parking, we were ruled not out of order, but as sort of not in the agenda. This disturbed us. This is on a plan that was presented in 2007 and 2008, and it lapsed 3 years after. It appears to have been picked up holus bolus out of the garbage can and dropped upon us again. While we may be in general in favor of a program to develop this property, we do have some concerns. I got to catch up with myself. So this apparently has to do with the acceptance of this has to do with the new program council has put in place regarding development permits. They apparently do not come before the public at large anymore, but are handled by staff. So you put one in the garbage, then you pick it up, and you kind of refiddle it, and then you say, it is all accomplished, and you will have nothing to say about it. Well, I'm here to tell you that we do have something to say about it, inasmuch as part of that wants to use our common driveway as access to a park that is to be gazetted in the back of the property. We have not been approached about that. This was in the original proposal by Stratford Properties, and it was changed at the end of those public meetings to read that there would be city access, not public access, for which we were more or less in favor. But to have this one dropped on us out of the blue is unconscionable, and we will not accept it, and we will not cooperate with it. Councillor Day did question at this meeting I'm referring to if the parking would be provided for the parkland included in the development. The staff were unaware that this would be possible or would take place, but it could be clarified before bringing this application before council. This application is now tonight being brought before council. We're wondering whether or not this has been looked into or looked after, and we have not been approached as those people who are immediately concerned. It is the driveway of our common property. We are also concerned about the height of this building as with regard to our views. In the original application, the height of the building was not to exceed the height of the bottom of our outside deck. I don't see that anywhere in this application. And yet, in one of these various plans, the one of Development Permit 1007, put out July 2008, it does say, under Section 3(9), the terms of instrument, Part 2, Section 219, Covenant, page 5, Item G, be amended to read, quote, granted to the city of Colwood a statutory right-of-way at least 4 meters wide for city access from Belmont Road to the park area, in a form acceptable to the city engineer, over that portion of the neighboring property shown as common property of the strata plan. That still has not been done. No one has spoken to us. The developer has not spoken to us. The planning committee did not speak to us about that. City council has not spoken to us about that. Planning has not spoken to us about that. Although I have talked to planning about it previous to that meeting on last Tuesday. And I got some information back from planning saying that certain things would be available. This is from Richard Walker. Hello, Terry and Barb. Please find attached. He says the document provided by the applicant indicating the proposed changes to the development application, which I provided a hard copy to you this morning, states, dedicated, quote, dedicated as park under Section 107 of the Land Title Act. All that portion of the land's the park area. Wording is slightly different, however, between one and the other. And I suspect, this is Richard Walker, I suspect that it's likely an oversight. As far as I know, that oversight has not been corrected. So here we are. What kind of a democracy are we running here? Where we're not allowed to comment on a development permit that has come before, and we are not at all satisfied. We also need to talk a little bit about congestion in Belmont Park. We have a school that's headed for 800. It is a French-only school, so that the kids who are going to school from Belmont Park have to be bussed out. And those who are coming for French have to be bussed in, as are the parents who come in. And the comments that were made at the committee of last Tuesday were that, there were very few, wasn't much traffic. Well, try the traffic at 8:30 in the morning and try the traffic at 10 minutes to 3 in the afternoon. If there was an emergency declared in any way, shape, or form, there would be nobody able to get anywhere with anything. I'd like to know whether or not that has been taken into consideration. It doesn't appear to have been, and this would appear that it's going through as denoted. We would like some satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elford. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to anything? Information? Last and final chance. Seeing none, we will then move forward. We have Mayor's message. I have a couple of announcements to work with. In Canadian Forces base of Esquimalt is going to be upgrading the existing A and B jetties located in Constance Cove. I know that's outside of our jurisdiction, but there will be some changes there that may have makes people inquire. So they do have a public information session on March the 25th from 7 till 9 at the Songhees Wellness Center. If anyone wants to attend to that, if you're in the adjacent waterfront areas there, you might want to partake in that. And I think that's all at the moment that we've got for tonight. Looking then to move into item 4, which is adoption of the regular meeting of Council February 23rd minutes. Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Looking to receive a series of minutes here. Committee of the Whole Budget, February 16th. Cycling Advisory, February 2nd. Economic Development and Innovation, January 22nd. Planning and Land Use, February 3rd. And Parks, Recreation and Culture, January 19th. Second, Councillor Nault. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Presentations, we have 2 this evening, and we will start with Crest representative, General Manager Gordon Horth. If you want to take the stand there, thanks.
Thanks very much, Mayor and Council, for giving me an opportunity just to give a little bit of an overview of what Crest has been up to. And I apologize right up front to Councillor Logan, who's seen much of this material before. So I'm just going to wander over. Apparently, Marcy says, like Oprah, I can wander around. And not perhaps not as gauged as Oprah here, but.
And I hope we make that bigger because I can't read that.
There you go. I can do it from over there? All right. So I'm just going to give you some highlights in terms of what we've been up to, and by all means, ask lots of questions at the end, or you can jump in at any time. I think the important aspect in this slide is that we went live in 2003 with 36 agencies 12, 13 years ago. We stand at 50 agencies, so people obviously believe the system provides great public safety network, and it's cost effective from a delivery standpoint as well. So we continue to improve in terms of how many agencies come on board, and you'll see in terms of the investment we've made in the last 12, 13 years as well. This is what the network looked like in 2003. So there were sites all throughout the region, a couple in the Gulf Islands, out in the western communities, 1 or 2 in Saanich, Victoria, and 1 out in the peninsula. That posed some challenges at the beginning. We frankly didn't have enough infrastructure to provide the coverage I think that people were expecting. The board recognized this fairly early, and we made further improvements, and we continue to do so. In fact, one of our most recent sites is on Triangle Mountain that we put in 2013. But that's our infrastructure today. We have 29 sites instead of the 9 we started with. And secondly, the fire apparatus, the vehicle repeaters, just really allows fire departments to bring their infrastructure with them. And it's like a hotspot really at an incident, and they tune the radios to that incident command vehicle, and that gives them pretty well guaranteed 100% coverage in the area. But we are a technology company, and the system has been live for 12, 13 years, and it's difficult to maintain with the existing vendor. The system is discontinued, so it's difficult to get spares for. And as well, technologies move forward, and additionally, there's new spectrum availability to improve our capacity, and it works particularly well in an urban core. So our plan is to deploy 700 megahertz spectrum in the downtown, as well as out in the western communities. And we may push it out onto the peninsula and stick with our existing frequencies, which is VHF, works very well in a rural area, travels far, goes through trees, which is in the rural area, works very well sort of out in the western communities and on the Gulf Islands as well. So we'll be adding sort of a dual band situation where we've got 700 in the cores, and VHF will continue to be deployed in the outlying area. The plan is to roll this out in the next 3 or 4 years, and I think that what we will see is increased capacity by using this different spectrum. We will get better coverage. We're going to a different technology called multicast now. It becomes simulcast. I'm not going to go into the technical aspects. And the audio quality is improved just with the use of technology. Things have changed dramatically in the last 12 years. As I said, not many of you are packing the same smartphone that you had in 2003, probably don't have the same laptop or desktop, and really what Crest provides is a technology solution for interoperability and connecting the 50 agencies together. So it's time to refresh the technology, and that's the plan. We've been aggressively reducing our debt, and it stands below $10 million. Our initial outlay was $25 million, and over the next 4 to 5 years, we expect to deploy the new technology, and it'll about half will be network, about $12 million, and about half, another $12 million, will go to replacing radios over that 5-year window. That's the timetable, roughly speaking. We'll start in the core. Agencies in the core will switch to a dual band radio so they can go anywhere, 700 or VHF. We'll go live in 2016. We'll push that technology out into the West Shore and out to the Saanich Peninsula, and we'll convert the rest of the system in 2018. So about a 3 to 4 year window. As I said, in terms of we feel it's fiscally well managed. We can do the network under 2% annually over the next 7 years. Radios are a more costly item in terms of its additional cost. However, agencies can time their purchases, and we're going to RFP on that, so we hope to get a good price on it. It's a very competitive market these days, but we think that those costs can be contained over a phased approach. For example, your fire department is slated for possible replacement in 2017 for their radios. RCMP 2016, I guess the nice thing about having an RCMP contract, you don't pay for the radios, you're paying on a per member basis. The radios come with it, so even though we're asking them to put new radios into play, you don't pay for that price. It's a fixed cost for those people using the RCMP services. Different story if you've got a municipal police force. One of the things that's kind of interesting and may not have got onto your radar, Councillor Logan may have raised it. When we rolled out, we received a call answer levy on landlines from all residential users in the CRD, and that brought us in about $1.5 million annually. Obviously, as people move to cell phones, that revenue's been decreasing. So if we had kept up with inflation, we'd be getting about $1.9 million annually. However, we're getting about $1.3 million. So that gap comes out of the levies we charge users, including obviously Colwood and everyone else. So we're looking for support to increase our CRD service fees, which is what we use as a revenue source. Consequently, we could reduce our levies to you folks. We rely heavily on our user advisory committees, like our fire services, police services. We've got a special committee. It's not very well lit up there. The Radio Systems Upgrade Working Group, kind of an acronym for the users looking to outline what they want in the new network and the feature set of the new radios. So we've been actively working for about almost 2 years on this program. And I think we're in a position now where they feel comfortable in terms of what the new system will do and what the new radios, how they perform, because they've been deployed out in the field for over a year now. Again, we're trying to reach out to make sure that our shareholders like Colwood are well informed and up to speed. I was at the police chiefs meeting for the area last week. So we make a real effort to communicate to our shareholders, to our user groups, and frankly, anyone who's interested in public safety. So the shareholders voted for the expenditure last September, and the board at our February meeting gave us the go-ahead to go to RFP on the network side of things. So that will hit the streets in about 2 weeks' time. And we will use user agency representatives to be part of the evaluation committee, so that we've got buy-in and good understanding as we roll out on the next generation. And I'm open to any questions from anyone.
Turn to council. Any questions for Mr. Horth? Seeing none, I think you did a good job.
That or maybe something else, but I'm not sure, the technology stuff. But
Yeah.
Thanks for hearing me out. Appreciate it.
Already. Thank you. Next up for presentation, please, the Dogwood Initiative folks. Jane, who's going to? So I know you've got a few. So, yep, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Catherine Cass. I'm actually a resident of View Royal. Do you want my address, or that's okay? I am the acting community organizer for the Colwood chapter of Dogwood, and I'm just stepping in tonight for Nikki Tsares, who is a Colwood resident, and she's not able to make it tonight. Oh, is it better? Okay. Did you get enough of that? Did you hear what I said? Sorry. No? Good. Okay. Before I pass the mic over to our Colwood team to present the background information and the motion, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First, I want to acknowledge that we are meeting and presenting this motion on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And I'd also like to acknowledge and express appreciation to Colwood Council for passing a Dogwood motion last August, stopping the expansion of oil tanker traffic on our coast. And now I'm going to give the mic over to Judy Nault, who will give some background information about the motion.
Hi, I'm Judy Nault, 274 Belmont Road. I'm a volunteer with the Dogwood Initiative, and I'd like to present some speaking points to the motion, which you also have in your package, I believe. The Trans Mountain expansion project, if approved, would triple the Trans Mountain pipeline capacity and increase oil tanker traffic almost 7-fold through the Strait of Juan de Fuca. An increase in groundings, accidents, incidents, leaks, and oil spills would be inevitable. Transport Canada and numerous expert studies have confirmed the subsequent risk of an oil spill would be very high off southern Vancouver Island, which would have a disastrous effect on local jobs, marine life, property values, and tourism and recreation. The cities of Victoria, Vancouver, Burnaby, and New Westminster have publicly challenged the credibility of the National Energy Board review process The most recent example being the NEB's refusal to release Kinder Morgan's full oil spill response documents as requested by the province. Mark Eliason, former CEO of BC Hydro, has withdrawn as an intervener, citing a fraudulent and undemocratic review process. MLA and intervener Andrew Weaver has also been equally vocal in his criticism of the NEB. The Tsleil-Waututh First Nation on the Burrard Inlet has filed a lawsuit challenging the NEB process as flawed and unlawful since it was designed without First Nations consultation or public participation. This challenge goes to the heart of the Crown's assertion that it can make unilateral decisions about our territories, states Chief Maureen Thomas. The one-sided review would see Tsleil-Waututh elders cross-examined by pipeline company lawyers, but company representatives would not need to testify under oath themselves.
Once again, I'm just stepping in for Nikki Tsares with a few more speaking points. The grassroots movement to stop pipeline expansion and tanker traffic off our coast has mushroomed in the past 2 years. In the riding of Esquimalt Royal Roads alone, over 7,000 residents have signed Dogwood's initiative petition in support of a citizens' initiative to allow BC citizens to vote on the issue of expanded oil tanker traffic. Dogwood now has more than 210,000 supporters throughout BC, with 1,000 active volunteers in 38 electoral ridings. There are more than 50,000 supporters in the Capital Regional District and almost 1,400 in Colwood. Dogwood intervened successfully during the municipal elections with 500 candidates completing its survey and 40,000 people visiting the Let BC Vote 2014 website. A similar campaign is planned for the upcoming federal election to enable local citizens to exercise decision-making power over their land, air, and water. If the province withdraws from the NEB equivalency agreement and institutes its own review, this will bring decision-making power back home to BC where it belongs. Continued pressure is needed to make sure that the Union of BC Municipalities and the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities lobby the province to take immediate and decisive action. A similar motion has already been passed in the municipalities of Esquimalt, View Royal, and Vancouver, and will be tabled in Victoria this Thursday. Thank you. I'll pass the mic to Whitney Moyer, who will present the motion.
Mayor, council members, staff, good evening. My name is Whitney Moyer and I live in Colwood. And on behalf of the Colwood chapter of the Dogwood Initiative, I'd like to present to council tonight the following motion. Whereas the current National Energy Board NEB assessment of the Trans Mountain Pipeline has proven to be deeply flawed, undemocratic, and no longer credible, and whereas the Union of BC Municipalities endorsed Victoria's Emergency Resolution, LR2, in September 2014, calling on the Environmental Assessment Office of the Province of British Columbia to undertake its own environmental assessment process of the Trans Mountain Expansion Project and withdraw from the 2010 equivalency agreement with NEB. But no response has been received from the province. Therefore, be it resolved that the Colwood Municipal Council affirms support for the 2014 UBCM Resolution LR2, calling on the province of British Columbia to withdraw from the 2010 equivalency agreement with the NEB and undertake its own environmental assessment process of the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, with meaningful participation by First Nations, municipalities, and all other interested British Columbians. Be it further resolved that the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities endorse UBCM Resolution LR2 and call for a prompt response from the government. Thank you.
Thank you. All good on the presentation now? Okay. Any questions of these folks at this time, Council? Seeing none, thank you very much. Moving into item number 6, correspondence requiring council direction. We have first and foremost the memo and background information that from the presentation that is just concluded in regards to the request for motion and support. So I will put it to council.
I would move a motion of support.
Excuse me? It was just a little muffled there, I think, Jason.
Sorry, I would move a motion of support of the resolution as presented.
Okay. I need a seconder.
Second.
Discussion, folks? Anyone? Councillor Nault?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As an avid scuba diver of 36 years, I have seen our marine ecosystem under extreme stress from population growth, from overfishing, from pollution. You only have to look at the situation with our killer whales, the recent starfish wasting disease, the decline of large fish populations to know that this is an ecosystem on the edge. I feel that any increase in tanker traffic with the potential of a major oil spill could push this over the tipping point. It will be disastrous. I urge Council to support this motion, and I urge the province to respond in kind. Thank you.
Any further comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion has been carried. Next piece on the correspondence, 6.2, a letter from David Black requesting an expression of interest to host the Commonwealth Games. Is there anybody to take a lead? Does anyone know? I think that this was passed to Councillor Martin, and with him not being here, it's fairly straightforward. It is not any sort of an intent or commitment, but simply an expression of interest. This is we hosted the 1994 Commonwealth Games in Greater Victoria. The venues were spread out amongst the municipalities, and for those that were hosting events, there was some gain to recreational activities and that sort of thing. So, how does council feel with this? I'm sure that Colwood alone would not be able to host and whatever, but this is been put forward to all of the municipalities out there. So at this point, I have not heard back from any of them.
Would this indicate that it would be a shared cost amongst all the municipalities?
You know, and I have no idea of any of those. I think it would require more information, certainly. Councillor Day, did you have something?
She stole my thunder.
Yeah, we're good at that.
Wondering about the costing as well. I mean, on the surface, reading the letter, it sounds like a great idea. We still have many of the venues from hosting the Commonwealth Games in '94. Certainly we could do it again. They're suggesting that we position ourselves as a plan B in case things should fall through in Durban, I believe, South Africa.
Yeah, it is a
So, you know, it sounds reasonable, but I don't know anything about the financial implications, so that's the only thing that's holding me back from being supportive.
We can receive for information, and or I can perhaps write a letter through to Mr. Black looking for further information, if you like.
I would support that a letter be written for further information.
So we put that out there on the table then, folks. Motion and the seconder. All those, anybody else for questions, comments? Councillor Knoll?
I think the telling paragraph in the letter is we believe the cost of the games has inflated to a level that imperils the chances of Commonwealth cities holding them and threatens their ongoing existence. I would be very curious to see what their cost-saving suggestions are and have a comparison with the cost of putting on the 94 Commonwealth Games.
Anybody else? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Planning and Land Use Committee memo. Staff, please, on the OCP 0114 RZ 0213 for 2356 Souk Road. Update on open space. Ivo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The applicant has applied to amend the rezoning and OCP designation of the properties at 2350 and 2356 Souk Road. At the regular meeting held on August 25th, 2014, Council directed staff to prepare the bylaws accordingly. In addition, Council added a recommendation that the applicant work with staff to explore options for increasing the amount of open space on a property in order to meet policy 19.11.7 of the OCP and submit revised plans and bring those back to Council. The report on the agenda today includes a plan that is the result of working with the applicant. Thank you.
Councillor Logan?
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Councillor Day?
Thank you. Just wondering why this didn't come forward to the Planning and Land Use Committee?
I believe at that time we may have overlooked that section of the OCP.
Okay, and just to follow up, just because it makes it kind of hard to hash it out here at the council table, I'm finding it difficult to tell kind of what the differences are between the old application and the new, other than areas that were not previously designated open space are now actually mapped as being open space. They don't appear to have changed in size. Have they, in fact?
The overall, I guess, site plan has indeed not changed. We've just now designated certain areas that will be kept as open space. To clarify, the single-family residence on one of the properties will remain. So with the open space now dedicated or shown on the plan the way it is, it also kind of outlines what the I guess remainder situation will be with the regarding the single-family dwelling on the property.
Anyone else? Call the question on the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.1.2, DVP permit application 1502 for 3127 Wood Park Drive.
Thank you, Worship. The applicant is requesting to vary Section 5.6.06, subsection 2A of the Land Use Bylaw number 151, reducing the minimum allowable side yard setback requirement from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters for the northerly side yard, and the allowable combined side yard setback requirement from 4.5 meters to 3.8 meters in order to facilitate the construction of a carport or garage addition to the northern side of the existing single-family dwelling. The applicant has stated that he is requesting the variance as there is not enough space currently to build the carport or garage, and he's also added that the neighbor would affect is not concerned as his garage is on the same side that the new structure will be built. And I will move that it was recommended by committee, and I so move that the development variance permit number DVP 15002 be authorized for issuance, which would have the effect of varying A and B, which were outlined above, and on the property described as Lot 13, Section 68, Esquimalt District Plan 21165, also known as 3127 Wood Park Drive, subject to the applicant providing a survey certificate prepared by a registered BC land surveyor, demonstrating the compliance with the reduced side yard setback requirements immediately after the concrete foundation has been placed.
Discussion, council? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 7.1.3, development variance permit application DVP 15-001-4284 Belmont. Councillor Knoll, please excuse yourself.
Thank you.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. The applicant is requesting to vary Section 52.2.01 of the Land Use Bylaw number 151, relaxation of the minimum allowable number of off-street parking stalls for residential multifamily use from 1.5 per dwelling unit, plus one for each 100 square meters of building floor area exceeding 60 square meters, times the number of dwelling units to 1.1 per dwelling unit, and the relaxation of the minimum depth of a 90-degree off-street parking stall perpendicular to the maneuvering aisle, pursuant to Section 2.2.02 of the Land Use Bylaw number 151, from 5.8 meters to 4.5 meters for not more than 20% of the total number of required off-street parking stalls. The applicant gave an overview of the parking study conducted by Bunton Associates Engineering that stated they found 0.8 stalls per dwelling unit would be suitable, although they are requesting the variance for 1.1 stalls per dwelling unit. I do want to say that and offer my apologies to those that showed up to the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting on Tuesday. In my desire to keep folks on topic, I was unaware that there was the anticipation that there would be discussion on other changes that are being proposed for this development. And I understand that the notice went out before the meeting, and therefore the meeting scope had changed to just discuss the parking variance. Other changes that will be coming towards the development will be coming to a future Planning and Land Use Committee meeting. I also want to point out, too, that this property that we're talking about was actually rezoned in 2007, and the variances that were previously approved, however, the permit expired, and hence it was brought back to committee. So again, the only discussion that we had at the committee on the agenda was regarding the parking. So it was recommended by committee, and I so move that the development variance permit number DVP 15-001 be authorized for issuance, which would have the effect of varying A and B on the subject described as Lot A, Section 96, Esquimalt District Plan 4475 or 287 Belmont Road, subject to items 1 through 4 in the recommendation.
Seconder, please. Seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Discussion, council? Councillor Day?
Thank you. I just am wondering if my recollection is correct in that when they are counting the number of parking stalls for the building, the on-street angled parking, does it include that in the count for the residential uses within the building? I'm trying to determine what parking there is for people who would wish to access the park.
I don't believe there is any public access to the park. That park was created to preserve the Gary Oak Meadow, and public access would probably destroy the Gary Oak Meadow. Obviously, the people who live in the building will have easy access, but we will do what we can to prevent that. There is will be walking access on this property for the city to access the park.
Anyone else? Laha?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say I really struggled with this decision. I thought 1.1 stalls per dwelling unit was not enough. But after seeing the studies, I realized that maybe the people that would be moving in here wouldn't be vehicle owners. And I also thought that this move to reduce parking stalls would be a step towards achieving our goals in our master transportation plan, and that it is near public transit. It's a walkable area, and for this reason, I think it's appropriate to accept the reduction in parking stalls.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Trace?
I'd just like a little clarification from staff on number 4 under the recommendation. The direction for staff to report back to council with strategies about consideration being given to spillover parking into the streets and reducing the spillover parking into the streets as a result of the 1.1 parking.
The currently the strategies that we are using is to create official on-street parking in the form of parking scallops. Based on the parking study, there were no recommendations provided as far as to I guess reduce spillover. The study seemed to speak to that the proposed or the variance that is requested is actually more than they would recommend for a minimum amount of parking. So there's no additional spillover strategies that we're aware of at this time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We heard from Mr. Alford earlier this evening, and although he is aware that the meeting that was called was more specific to parking issues and not to some of the other concerns that he has had and others, both in the past development processes and whatever, will there be an opportunity for staff to meet with him or make sure that he's informed when other parts of this development come forward, as Councillor Logan said?
Your Worship, the developer did commit to have a neighborhood meeting to discuss some of the issues that were raised at last week's Planning and Land Use Committee. Also, planning staff has extended the olive branch to let residents know that they're most welcome to come and view the plans before and what is currently proposed. So everyone is aware who attended last week's meeting that was out there.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Day?
Will this project be coming back to the Planning and Land Use Committee so that there can be an open dialogue with the neighborhood about? I realize that some of it's a complicated development because the way that we handle developments and specifically development permits has changed probably between when this first came forward and now. So that was the issue that was being spoken to earlier. So I think it would be beneficial to the neighborhood to have the city, I know the developer is going to speak to the neighbors, and that makes a lot of sense in terms of building good relationships between developers and neighbors. But it's also, I think, important that the city clarify what they expect to have happen and what choice points we have going forward.
And I think we've heard that through. Anything else? Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Chong, can you grab Councillor Nault for me, please? We will move through then to item 7.2, Economic Development Innovation Committee. Just wondering, are you going to take this one?
Yes, Councillor Martin, who chairs the committee, is away, and I attended in Councillor Trace's absence when she was away. So at the committee meeting, the committee reviewed a list of projects with a view to improve the city's sense of place, to improve the way we view ourselves and how others view us. Many of the items that are in the list are actually funded from sources other than taxation, and all are seen as projects that are key to rebranding ourselves. One only has to look at the effect that the new sign has had on the Colwood Strip as an example. The motion that I will be making on behalf of the committee simply formalizes their inclusion in the 2015 budget discussions, and the Director of Finance was aware that these were coming forward, and I believe we've had actually some discussion already during the budget cycle. And no formal discussion or no formal resolution has been made yet to approve or deny them, as we're still in the budget deliberations. Therefore, it was recommended by committee, and I so move, that the proposed 2015 budget allocations associated with the economic development strategy be supported as follows. A, economic development officer position with an optimistic spring 2015 start. Land use bylaw update and downtown revitalization, community profile, waterfront branding and promotion, community wellness initiative, street banners, and partners event at Fisgard Lighthouse.
And before we get a seconder, I know our administrative officer had some other wording in there that was a bit more clear around this is part of the 2015 budget discussions.
I just wrote a couple of notes when I was discussing with the mayor, who expressed a little bit of concern that it might sound like we're doing early approval for things that we have in the budget deliberations process. So to clarify the wording, we were thinking that the item be introduced as that the following 2015 budget allocations associated with the economic development strategy be considered for approval through the 2015 budget deliberations process, and then it just lists the same one. So it just still keeps it in the budget deliberations, not looking like it's been approved by a council motion tonight. That's all we were looking for.
And I will so move.
And now we'll entertain your second. Councillor Trace. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, call the question. All those? Oops. Pardon me, Councillor Chung.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to express that I like the plan. My concern is that how would we be able to assess whether it was economical for us? So how much it cost, and versus how much we gain from the plan. So would there be an annual assessment in place or anything like that?
Can you clarify us in any specific point or overall in general?
Overall in general, I'm just looking at the things. So the development officer position would be $45,000 for 2015, and also $400 for the street banners, $400 for the partners event, and then we have another $6,000 for the community profile. So all those things add up, and we have to take into account how much revenue we'll get.
And that's why these are all part of our budget deliberation process that we're presently undertaking. So I think that those questions may be more specifically answered at that time. Anyone else? Councillor Day?
Well, I think that's a great idea that Councillor Chong has in terms of trying to do some sort of measurement. So I certainly think that's something that we should flag for our economic development team to look at, finding some benchmarks within the community, even if it's a very simple measurement of the health and well-being of our business community. But that some sort of measurement would be, I think, ideal. I think in all the years of presentations that I've seen, and there's been quite a few on economic development, specifically places like Burns Lake, Williams Lake, northern mill towns particularly have very much invested in economic development. And I have yet to, some of them have come forward with some, great success stories. But none of them have been tied to a specific measurement device that I've seen. So it might be something very innovative that we could bring to the table.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to 7.3.2 then, folks, the memo that was at our desks in the loose paper there in regards to Elections BC notification of granted disclosure statement filing extension. 7.3.2?
Oh. Noise bylaw relaxation? Page 79.
Oh, wait a minute. I was thinking we're under economic development. So I'm sorry, folks. We'll back up 7.3.1. Finance and admin, we're on report. Relaxation of noise bylaw because we have yet another film production hitting the local West Shore. Is there somebody who wants to lead on this, or shall I just give you your intro? I didn't have any success finding Leo DiCaprio last week, so we're on to a new one.
Apparently he was at Thrifty's.
Yeah, he was. Staff, are you going to...
Sure. So the boys' film production team has asked for a relaxation on the noise bylaw Saturday, March 28th and Sunday, March 29th, which would allow them to continue filming right through to 1 a.m. in the morning. And this is taking place at Hatley Castle, and therefore the effect on the neighbors should be much less than it would be if there were any near neighbors. And we've given options of either council resolving to enforce the noise bylaw as usual, or allow the relaxation to permit this filming to be done. And there are no financial implications to the city. The film company will be responsible for notifying the neighbors, and the city will also take steps to make sure it's publicly available information. And we have provided a suitable resolution if, under recommendations, if council wishes to allow this filming to go forward. Thank you.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Discussion, Council? Councillor Nault?
Yes, I remember a nightmare from a number of years ago when we had a movie company ask for a similar relaxation of the noise bylaw for Hatley Castle. Again, it was the filming of the X-Men. It wound up with 3 helicopters circling Belmont Park till about 3 a.m., around and around and around, for 2 days. I would like to know, before we support this, what the nature of the noise they are going to generate is, and well, let's start. What kind of noise are they talking about? Is it music? Is it helicopters? Is it simulated Second World War battles?
What would you think?
I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that. I was away at the time this report was prepared, and I haven't been briefed on it. So.
And the second question is, again, for the last time we did this, Hatley Castle got some fantastic improvements paid for by the film company. Colwood got 0. The residents of Colwood got 0, except the loss of 2 nights of sleep. Given that there is no financial implication for the city, I would be opposing this. I think the residents deserve far more information than just let them go, boys.
Anyone else? Councillor Day?
I think Councillor Nault raises good points in terms of maybe the city should be getting something out of it. I don't know if there's a permit fee that they're paying, but it certainly has taken staff time to prepare this report and for it to be considered. So that's something that I think we should look into for the future. But I think that I would support this going ahead for now, and I'm hoping it's not helicopters or war simulation for you. But those are probably questions we should know the answers to. So I think in future we should consider that. But this is one way that institutions like Royal Roads University are using to help keep themselves going in our community, and that is important too.
Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Worship. Quite frankly, I think the city does get stuff out of it. We get value, we get recognition, we get notoriety, we get bragging rights, and all that is in itself priceless. And you know, I think we're becoming known as a destination, and not only for filming, but for other things as a result of. So while we may not receive a $50 or $200 permit fee, we get sufficient advertising, which I think is a hell of a lot more than that. But notwithstanding helicopters, machine guns, and men in camouflage hanging out by Councillor Nault's back door.
Councillor Nault?
Yes, the reason film companies come to Canada to film is because every city in the United States charges a fortune to do this. I believe we should be doing the same thing. I would like to see us stay competitive, but at the same time, other cities get a benefit from traffic disruption, noise, inconvenience for their residents. Hollywood is a multi-million-dollar industry, and surely they can afford a few amenities for Colwood. So again, I will be opposing this until such time as we have a financial return and assurances of what the noises are.
And I will remind members of council that one of the last film productions we had in the local area did make a contribution on behalf of their involvement, which took some of the pressure off of a grant funding request that we had. So although it might not be always big, we have had interaction with them. So I think we've heard some really good points to be made and something that we can work on for the future. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion does carry.
I will be keeping my councillors informed on an hour-by-hour basis.
7.3.2 now we can do. In front of us, the Elections BC notification of granted disclosure statement filing extension.
Thank you. In February the 19th of 2015, the city was notified by Elections BC of a granted disclosure statement filing extension. As you all know, since you all ran in the election, the requirement for campaign financing disclosure now lies with Elections BC, not the city. So all successful and unsuccessful candidates have to make sure that they file within the new timelines under the, what is this called? The Local Elections Campaign Financing Act. And the deadline for filing was February the 13th. There's a requirement in that same act that requires the BC Chief Electoral Officer to notify local governments when somebody did not file their disclosures on time. And we have to bring that to a public meeting and make sure that council and the public are aware. So we do have Mr. Paul DeVito, who did not file his disclosure on time, but because of an extenuating circumstance, the Chief Electoral Officer has granted him an extension without penalty, so there's no fine or fee that he'll have to pay for being late. He is required, however, to file his campaign financing by March the 16th at 4:30. If he doesn't do that, or if he does do that, the BC Chief Electoral Officer will advise the city and gives us direction from that point forward, depending on the outcome of whether he did file or not. So all we're doing tonight is making sure that council is aware in a public meeting that we do have one individual who does have an extension to filing his campaign financing disclosures, and all we need from council tonight is just receipt of the memo.
Thank you.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, 7.4, Parks, Rec and Culture Committee, Carger Park.
That's for me. Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will just give the highlights of each item. So for Carger Park, at the November 17, 2014 meeting, staff was directed to prepare a 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year maintenance plan on Carger Park. This would allow staff the ability to review the conditions of the park in 5-year intervals and compare to the arborist report, and the committee and public would get a chance to review it and recommend to council. It was thought that it would be more realistic to create a 5-year plan and then review the park before the 6th year. And the 5th year consists of removal of invasive species, restoration work, and the removal of 6 trees. The financial implications are approximately $800 for materials. Tree contractor work would be approximately $700 for a total of $1,500. The labor cost to carry out the works will depend on the amount of volunteer assistance available. All the restoration work will fall under the existing invasive species and park restoration budget. The park maintenance would be approximately $7,500 to $15,000 annually, depending on the maintenance level available in the parks and playgrounds budget. It was expressed in the committee meeting that $7,500 to $15,000 annually is quite the range. And I will move that council direct staff to move forward with a restoration plan to remove all invasive species and the 6 small or sickly dead trees, plant native species, prune and maintain all trees within Carger Park to help restore and encourage the growth of the Garry Oak ecosystem for the period of 5 years. In 2020, a review of the next 5 years of the Carger Park restoration plan will be prepared and brought back to the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee for review and recommendation to council.
Seconder, please. Second. Discussion, council? Call, Councillor Date.
Sorry, I just want to commend the Parks Committee for their work on this issue. It started as a very divisive issue in the community, and as you can see, at least they're not here tonight to say that they're dissatisfied with the outcome. So I'm believing that we've, I think, struck a good balance between the best interests of the local neighbors and also the long-term interests of the city and our park inventory. So well done.
And I echo that. I received a couple of phone calls from folks who were pleased with the outcome of and thoughtfulness of the process. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Park on Promenade Crescent, recommendation 7.4.2. Councillor Chung.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Staff is currently in the process of preparing information sheets and maintenance plans for all Colwood parks. To date, Colwood has 30 of the 75 parks completed with information sheets. The park on Promenade Crescent is one of the 27 parks that requires a formal name. At the committee meeting, we discussed that it is important to have signage from a risk management point, as the signs assist the residents using the parks, providing information on the parks in case there was a need for emergency assistance. We also questioned how the parks are prioritized, and size and park usage is in consideration of that. And I will move that the recommendation that council name the park on Promenade Crescent as Promenade Park, and instruct staff to install an information sign with written information and a schematic map of the park with the location of its trails at each of the 3 entrances to the park at a total cost of $750 with funding from the existing park signs budget.
Council? Councillor Knoll?
Sorry, just one question on the written recommendation. It says Promenade Parks. I assume that's supposed to be Promenade Park?
Yeah,
Oop, my mistake.
yeah, that was going to be my clarification. I'm sure we weren't had several of them. So it's a promenade park without the S. Councillor Day.
I was curious if that had something to do with some other future parks coming in there, because it's actually part of an oval area, and I'm ever hopeful that we might be able to acquire the other portion of property which actually completes that ecosystem, and is surrounded by housing, and was originally considered for an elementary school site within Royal Bay, and that was not something that the school board took the developer up on quite some time ago now. And it does make for a much better park, and certainly there's many inhabitants of the park, including woodpeckers, who some standing dead maple trees, or half-dead maple trees in there, that the woodpeckers regularly tear apart looking for insects. And if you're not careful when you're walking on the sidewalk, they'll drop bits of it on your head. But it would be very nice to see it either expanded or at least partly expanded.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, just wondering, is there a sign standard for our parks now, given our new logo and whatnot? And if not, or if so, will the communications manager be involved in terms of look, design, that sort of deal?
The communications manager is working on a new standard, but currently we are just proceeding with simply the name. The purpose is a very small sign, just giving people very basic information about the park. We assume that at some point there may be a new standard for that particular sign, or there may be new name signs that would be totally separate from the information sign.
I would just recommend that that Sandra be involved even on this little sign, because she might, may have some ideas before a specific standard is involved, just to make it as attractive as possible. So it's just not another sign with words. That's just a suggestion.
Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, Councillor Chung, Meadow Park annual maintenance cost estimate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the January 19th, 2015 meeting, the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee requested that staff provide an estimated cost for maintenance, an annual maintenance of Meadow Park in Royal Bay. An estimated cost of $41,952 for salaries only was given. This estimation is for labor only and does not reflect the cost for vehicles, equipment, materials, contractors or tree contractors, and shrub replacement. This park will be the most landscape-intense parks that the City of Colwood has ever had. It is also meant to be a signature park that sets the development off at the right tone and ensures that the marketing of the property is successful. Currently, the developer is waiting for an answer on the park concept before he can continue, so there will be no progress with this proposal unless the committee recommends to council and council agrees to the level of landscaping in the park. The city is also negotiating that the developer maintain the park for the first year, so the park would have a relatively small effect in the 2016 budget. The full effect of the park maintenance would come in the 2017 budget. The park would increase our park maintenance approximately by 10% because it is the most expensive park that has ever been presented to the city. This is why it would make a good test case. And I would move that the Parks and Recreation Culture Committee welcome the creation of the Meadow Park at Royal Road. I believe that's supposed to be Royal Bay.
Royal Bay.
as shown in their conceptual plan, and that the cost of the maintenance of Meadows Park be monitored in the early years to determine whether this can be a model for future park development.
Conversation, Councillor Day?
Thanks. Just a question. There was, I can't remember what they called it, but there was a particular type of landscaping element that they were considering putting in the park, which is kind of like the way the edge of Pelican Drive was done, which is wire baskets of stones that are placed in the center of the park. And I personally did not find them a very attractive option to consider, and I realize that things eventually are supposed to grow in them, but I think that given our experiences in the Royal Bay area with invasives, that's likely to become just more and more problematic with invasive species, and I'm just wondering if that is still part of the proposal. Do you know that?
I haven't heard anything about that in the proposal. At last committee meeting, we talked about the park and everything was pretty much still in the air. So apologies that I don't have that information.
Staff, anybody else on that?
I can check that and review that with the developer to see whether it is there and what other alternatives there might be.
Anyone else? Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to Councillor Chong. Just trying to figure out where the park is going to be in Royal Bay. I didn't see the concept plan on the.
Yeah, it's not included in our agenda.
I just wasn't sure whereabouts it was.
Sorry, I apologize that there wasn't an image included. There was some concept maps provided at the meeting before the January 19th one. Perhaps I can have those included next meeting.
Well, just roughly like around the school or, just to get, we can talk after. It's okay. I was just curious.
I can't open it up in my other one.
Yeah,
I was looking. It's not in the other one. Okay. Councillor Day?
So I guess I'm just having a little difficulty because, of course, I love the idea of a big park in Royal Bay, but I have no idea what I'm being asked to endorse here because there is no conceptual plan that's being presented to council. So I'm just wondering if we're maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves. Maybe is it possible that we could bring this back to the next council meeting with the concept plan so that we know what we're agreeing to?
It's always entertainable. I can't, I'm trying to get into the special meeting from February 24th, but it's just not opening up for me to identify anything.
So I'd like to move that we refer this to the next council meeting for just, not that I'm asking for anything new, just to have whatever's been presented.
Seconder?
Second.
Call the question on the motion to refer back to the next council meeting for that extra bit of information. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So we'll just bring that back with the concept plan attached to it. And that should help us identify what we're looking at because my wheel is still going round and round and round.
It's not in there anyway. No.
Okay. So easy enough for those folks to provide us with that extra bit of information. Not a problem. Moving forward then, folks, I do believe that concludes what we have on our agenda before us.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Nobody wants to second this one? No.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We're usually jumping all over that.